thank you for joining us today. And when I think about spring gardening, I always think about this time of year. I'm getting all the catalogs and all the wonderful things I want to plant, and I might be like to lay out my garden of where I want to plant. But really, what we need to be doing now is focusing on our soil. Okay, I need to get this off the screen. This, it says immediate screen. But when you want to work on your soil is the key to an important and a good garden. And when you go out to work in your garden, you'd like your soil to feel like that first picture that was on the other screen. And, you know, it's dark, it's crumbly, it's easy to work with. But when you go out to your garden, you may find soil looking more like this, sort of red clay, maybe some rocks and so on. And really want the one in the bottom right-hand side that is more like the soil you would love to have. And in any soils you've got, you can work toward this by the proper handling. Next. Next slide, please. Okay. Now, soil is a very amazing thing. And often way to look at it now that healthy soil is alive. Soil is the most diverse environment on the whole planet. There are more microorganisms in a teaspoon of soil than there are humans on Earth. And it is this soil life that digests the organic matter in the soil. And this is what provides the nutrients in available form to the plants. It's just amazing when you start looking at it. Next. Next slide. Okay. And there's several ways, things you can do to start improving your soil and making it more into the soil you would love to have. Or if you have wonderful soil, continuing these practices will keep it nice. You need to add organic matter. You need to disturb the soil as little as possible. Increase your diversity of plants. Keep soil covered, preferably with living roots all year long. This is a key to building healthy soil. It needs the organic matter. You don't want to disturb it because you just disturb that soil life. You want the diversity because there's different nutrients in different types of plants that can help feed that soil. And when you keep it covered, you keep all that nutrition in and you keep a lot of it from evaporating into the atmosphere. Next. Now, the ways you could prepare your soil and which you can start with earlier in the season is you can use cover crops, you can use mulches, amendments, and fertilizers. And we'll be talking about each of these. Go ahead. Okay, cover crops is probably the most effective thing you can do for your soil. You're growing your own fertilizer, essentially, for your own soil. And you can add legumes. Legumes are very special. They add nitrogen to your soil. They take nitrogen from the air and fix it onto their roots and so on the plants and put it into the soil. You can use grasses. They increase the organic matter, so you add more organic matter. Forbs or flowering plants, and they attract the beneficials to your garden. And mustards help to break up the deep soil. So we'll talk about a little bit more about this on the next slide. Go ahead. Now, this is not the appropriate time to do some of this, but for future reference, most cover crops are planted in the fall. And these are cool season crops. They need the cool weather. And as I said, you'd usually be planting legumes, which are your clovers, field peas, bell beans, and vetch, etc., or grasses like oats and rye, or mustards family, which are the mustards and the daikon radish. And as I said before, a variety is good because each one adds something to the mix. And you've got beautiful flowers on your mustards and on some of your legumes. And the daikon radish you can see at the bottom, has very good roots for breaking up soil that's hard and adding pathways and stuff into the soil. Next. Okay, you plant these in the late summer or early fall. They need to germinate before it gets too cold, but they need to get some initial growth before dormancy. And you may need to irrigate before rains to do this. And sometimes that can be a problem. Most of the growth is in the spring. And with all your cover crops, you want to cut or till in or cut or lay on top at least 3 weeks before planting. And legumes, to get maximum nitrogen, should be cut by 50% bloom. Next. Next slide, please. Next slide. Oh, there we go. There are a few, no, back one now. There. There are a few cover crops you could still grow because they don't take long to be effective. And that's field peas. And I think this is the fastest. It takes 60 days. So if you want to think about, if I plant them now in 2 months, is that time to incorporate them before I need to plant my garden? So you would probably need more like 60, 70 days or so before, maybe even 80 days before planting time, which is depending on your frost and frost time for your summer vegetables. Also, purple veg and bell beans are something else you can plant this late. When you plant in cool soils, you need to increase the planting rate to get good germination. And remember, you want to cut or till in your cover crops 3 weeks before planting. Next. Okay. Let me see. Oh, there we go. Now, you may also plant cover crops during the summer. And if you have some land that would be bare or not being used at this time, it was an excellent job to put those cover crops on, because you continue to build your soil and to build healthy soil when something's growing on it. So the summer cover crops that are common are buckwheat, which is beautiful, covers with flowers, often grown for weed suppression. And it's very quick turnaround, so it grows very quickly. Cowpeas or black-eyed peas is in that family, is another that you can grow in the summer. But if you want to grow them for the nitrogen, remember, you won't be growing them for harvest. You'll be cutting them down at 50% bloom. And another grass that's pretty incredible is Sudan grass. It can grow all summer once it's established with very little water. And you get a lot of growth and a lot of organic matter from Sudan grass. Next. Okay. There's other ways besides growing cover crops that you can prepare your soil and help to build organic matter and richness of your soil. And these are mulch, which is laid on top, amendments, which are nutrient rich, can be incorporated in the soil or left on top. An example of this would be compost, and fertilizers that supply nutrients directly to your plants. Next. Okay, mulch. This, if you have bare ground and you don't know what else to do with it right now, cover it with mulch. Get that soil covered. And you not only, you suppress weeds, you preserve moisture in the soil, and if it's organic mulch, you provide nutrients as the soil life slowly digests this matter at the interface of the soil and the mulch material. You can use inorganic things, and it's great. Some are great for, some people use them for looks, but you're not doing anything for your soil. Or some use a dark cover to suppress weeds and then take it off later. And this can often be a good technique just to get rid of some weeds because it kills weeds from lack of light. You can apply mulch now. You can apply mulch anytime, but do not incorporate it into the soil until it's broken down and it looks more like dirt. So if you apply mulch now, and when it's time to plant, it still looks, like your mulch and it's blocking the weeds and so on, you'll need to pull it back and plant. And when things start to grow, you can just sort of put it back over your beds. The common examples that are around is wood chips, hay, and straw, all readily available, all make good mulch. You can use other things too, and you can buy things for mulch, but these are relatively cheap and relatively easily available. Okay, next. Okay. Now, amendments are different from mulch because they are partially broken down already. And so they have nutrients that are readily available to plants right now. And they also have organic matter that will continue to be decomposed and make nutrients available. Okay, and as I said before, you can use it as a mulch. You can use an amendment as a mulch, like compost, like putting over the soil, leaving it there to block weeds, and you can incorporate it later. Or it can be incorporated, but then you're leaving soil bare at this point, which you may want to put a regular mulch over the top. And examples of amendments are compost, composted manures, worm castings, and organic fertilizers. Organic fertilizers take some time to break down too, so they can be applied and incorporated at this point if you'd like. Next. Okay, fertilizers. Fertilizers provide the nutrients directly to the plants. You don't have to have any soil life or anything else going on to get the benefit of these. And plants often require some fertilizer for the best growth. The one that you most likely will need to apply is nitrogen, because it is water soluble and can be washed away from your area your plants are with rains and so on. You can use organic forms such as manures or compost or alfalfa meal, feather meal, lots of different things. Or you can use inorganic forms such as chemical fertilizers and synthetic fertilizers. These are manufactured and from rocks and minerals and soil and can be put on, but they do not last as long in the soil, and they can burn if not used correctly. Often you can do a combination and get the best results. Okay, as I said before, the chemical fertilizers give quick results. The organic fertilizers provide a broader range and longer lasting nutrients. Remember, a chemical fertilizer is manufactured to provide a specific or a few specific nutrients. Organic fertilizers come from sources where all the nutrients are available but need to be broken down. Next slide. When we're talking fertilizers, there's 17 known essential nutrients, 14 that primarily come from your soil, and 3 primary ones, and these are where you see most of your fertilizers contain one or all of these: nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, NPK. Examples of the organic are compost, alfalfa meal, blood meal, bone meal, manure, etc. And they're extracted from living things or from the earth. Some of the minerals, some of your soil life will actually extract minerals from rocks and from soil to make it available for the plants. Synthetics are things like ammonia sulfate, phosphate, urea, etc. They're manufactured from natural materials to make more concentrated, soluble, ready to use for the plants. If that little graph sort of explains it, your organic fertilizers go in and they need to be digested by the soil life to change the forms to make it available for the soil. Chemical fertilizers are available immediately. Organic fertilizers will last longer in your soil. An application at the beginning of a growing season should be suffice. Synthetic fertilizers will not last as long, will get immediate response, but may need to be reapplied through the season. Go ahead. And as Dawn had explained, most of your fertilizers will be talked about to apply in the instructions will refer to 100 square feet. And this is sort of an example. And all of these, you need to look at what the recommendation is for the area you're doing so you don't over fertilize. So organic materials like poultry, goat, sheep, or rabbit manure, for 100 square feet, you'd use 10 pounds, or if you go to cubic feet, 25 hundredths of a pound or a cubic foot. If for steer, hog, dairy, and horse, you use 30 to 40, they're not nearly as hot, do not have nearly as much nitrogen as poultry manure. So read what you've got, see what, it will tell you how heavy to apply it for the area you're doing. If you put poultry manure on it the same rate as steer manure, it would be much too hot for your plants, too much nitrogen. Blood meal is another bone meal and fish meal, and they're showing you how many pounds for 100 square feet. Manures, and all of them could be applied about a month before planting, about the time you would be incorporating your organic, your cover crops. If you wanted to, felt like you needed to use both, you may want to add a little more nitrogen, especially when you incorporate your cover crops. Inorganic materials, remember, these are the ones that the plants can use immediately. And ammonia sulfate is a high nitrogen fertilizer. 16, 16, 16 means 16% nitrogen, 16% phosphorus, 16% potash, gives you recommendations. And the bags and where your boxes, you get the material, and they'll give you this information. And there's another combination that's very high nitrogen, 1990. So look at that. And if you with organic fertilizers or with cover crops, you are incorporating those plants which contain all these nutrients into the ground. And you don't have to worry as much about how much your soil needs. As I say, the one that's most likely to be needed is nitrogen because it's water soluble and leaches out of the soil. And your inorganic, it's, you can use a general one or just follow the recommendations and see your results. If you'd like to know more, you can get soil tests. You can search soil test labs in your area and find a place that'll do it, and they'll give you instructions and so on. Next. Now, the benefits of building a healthy soil by adding organics, by growing cover crops, is you're recycling nutrients. The nutrients recycle for the, you retain nutrients, you retain them in the soil, so they will be available later on. You improve the structure, infiltration, and water holding capacity of your soil. As the soil life works, it makes little channels, it makes your soil aggregate, and it provides space for water and for air and just general nice conditions for plants. They also, organic, by building a healthy soil, you get disease suppression. The plants and soil life actually work together to help resist diseases. You increase soil resilience, which means that during a drought, things will do better. They'll be able to survive longer. During really wet periods, they can cope with that too. Your soil is more resilient. By some of this soil life, you are actually degrading pollutants. When water filters through soil, and if the soil life works on it, you often are purifying and cleaning that water. And you're holding more carbon in the soil, so you're sequestering carbon, which is big and important today. Next. Okay, by following these recommendations, you can be building healthy soil, and healthy soil means healthy plants. You need to take care of your soil, and if you take care of it, it will feed your plants, and you will have to do less fertilizing and decision making on your own. Enjoy your garden and have a healthy harvest this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Don and Susan. At this time, we're going to address the questions you have put into the chat window. If you have more questions, please enter them now or contact the Master Gardener Help Desk at a future date.
Okay, we've had a few questions so far, and I think Dawn answered the first one. If you spray, do you have organic options? And Dawn, you answered sulfur is organic. Is there anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah, you can look out and see products that are OMRI, OMRI certified or listed. Things like neem oil. There's other pesticides you can use that might contain spinosads. So just look for those. They'll all be applicable. One thing to keep in mind, though, is read the labels, because certain sprays, especially with pesticides, and I'm going to specifically refer to the ones with spinosads, those can have an impact on bees. So if you're applying those during the vines blooming, you could have an impact on bees. So you might want to go with something else.
Okay, Dawn, next question for you. What type of cover crop?
So Susan talked a lot about this, and with vineyards, cover crops, I would recommend doing a number of different ones, not only the legumes, but I would also add the grasses as well. Again, like what Susan had referred to, is you want to contribute a number of different components to your soil. You know, one thing with cover crops to remember, if you are in an area where there is a late frost risk, you will want to make sure that those cover crops are mowed short right before bud break. Otherwise, you could, potentially put your vines at risk for freezing.
Okay, thank you. Susan, the buckwheat isn't our native California buckwheat, is it?
I'm not sure of that. I think it might be, but I honestly don't know. I'd have to look that up.
Susan, this is Maureen. I planted the buckwheat before. It's not related to the California plant. It's a cereal grain. It's not related to wheat, but it's kind of like that kind of plant. But it has the same name, but it's not related at all to the various types of like landscape plants that are termed buckwheat that we grow here.
Okay. Interesting question here. Is it possible to make your own blood meal? We raise chickens for meat and just usually throw the blood away.
I have no idea of the answer. That one would have to be researched, but I assume you would be able to do it.
Okay, someone's gonna have to look into that one. Okay.
You know, let me put in here now, I didn't show my last slide of my references, but to get good answers to these questions, just search UCANR in the question you have, and all kinds of information and articles will come up that are UC and research-based answers. So I would suggest that.
Okay, thank you, Susan. Okay, any other questions? Those are the only ones I've seen so far. I think going once, going twice. Don't be shy. All right. I think that takes care of our questions for this presentation. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much for attending our presentation about waking your vineyard and garden in the spring today. Remember, this presentation will be posted on our website early next week if you should want to review it. Happy gardening.